Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for joining us here today. My name is Paul C. Taylor. I am the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Studies here in the College of Liberal Arts. It will very soon be my great pleasure to introduce the esteemed Nina Jablonski. Before I do that, I want to say a few words about the occasion that draws us here together. This is one of the early events in our new first-year experience series. The aim that animates this series of events is that we want to ensure that, and many of you will have heard me say this at the welcome event or on other occasions, we want to make sure that we do the best we can to make it possible for you to get everything you can get out of the opportunities that Penn State provides. So, pursuant to that goal, we have crafted a suite of activities of various kinds that are meant to give you, come on in, a suite of activities of various kinds that are meant to give you a point of entry to the university that goes beyond the classroom. The classroom is very important, of course, right? That is one of the places where you begin to craft your identity as a scholar. But it is not, as you know, the only thing that happens here, right? And so one of the things we want to do is create structured pathways to connect with other dimensions of your experience. And that's one of the reasons we're here tonight. So this is the inaugural first-year liberal arts lecture. Professor Jablonski has been kind enough to agree to give this inaugural lecture. And I will introduce her in a moment. That's the occasion. First-year experience and events. Another of these events I want to call your attention. We will soon, on September 8th, is that right? The Liberal Arts Festival, which will be, I'm told, a carnival-esque affair involving tricycles and cotton candy and all sorts of things, in addition to opportunities to find out more about the kinds of things that go on here in the College of Liberal Arts, from different kinds of disciplinary communities you can join, right? What departments and programs we have here for you, but also student activities and student clubs and that sort of thing, right? So this is the next big thing, I think, in the first year experience series. And I just wanted to make sure I called that to your attention. So if anybody asks you if the guy talked about the Liberal Arts Festival, you say, okay. All right. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Nina Jablonski. I'm going to read just a little bit because when you are dealing with people of remarkable and immense accomplishments, like Professor Jablonski, you have to make sure you get them right. And so I want to make sure you get them right. Professor Jablonski is the director of the Center for Human Evolution and Diversity and the Pugh University Professor of Anthropology here in the College of the Liberal Arts. She is a biological anthropologist and paleobiologist, and she studies the evolution of adaptations to the environment in old world primates, including humans. Professor Jablonski is one of the brightest stars in the brightest lights in the constellation of stars here in the Liberal Arts faculty. I'm thrilled to have her here. There are lots more things I could say about her in the spirit in which I've started. She's a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. She has 100+ articles, 2 single-author books, and many, many grants and many other publications with her name. I could go on like this for a while. There are many other things I could say. But we live in an age of wonders in which all manner of information is available to you at your fingertips. You can leave this room and listen to her TED Talk, watch her TED Talk on your phone. You can find reviews of her remarkable book, Skin, A Natural History. You can do all of these things on your own, so you don't need me to do that. What you need me to do, which you probably need me to do a whole lot, but what I can do that goes beyond those things, is just give you a glimpse of the Nina that we know here. I'll do that by telling you about just one more of her accomplishments. She's one of the leaders of the Genetics and Genealogy, here after G&G, Curriculum Working Group, a project that she organized with, among others, Henry Louis Gates, to advance the education of underrepresented minorities and underserved groups in the sciences and scientific professions. She might tell us a little bit more about this project tonight. If she does not, you can find out more about it on your own in the manner I described a second ago after you watch the TED Talk. But I want to say a little bit about that because I want to tell you how the people involved in this project, the G&G project, describe Professor Jablonski's role. They say on the website that the project came together at the intersection of 2 major forces. One was Professor Gates, and some of you may know Henry Louis Gates. How many people know who Henry Louis Gates is? If you know him at all, you might know him from the PBS series that he's done. He's a towering scholar of African American literature and other things. He is a force in the academic world. So this project came together at the intersection of two major forces. Professor Gates was one of them. The other was Professor Jablonski. And this may be the most fitting description I've ever heard of her. She is a major force. Her energy, her enthusiasm, her passion for the life of the mind and for education is palpable and electric, and we've harnessed it and brought it here for you. So I'm grateful for her willingness to serve as the first liberal arts first-year lecturer. It is my honor to present Dean Jablonski to you to address the theme, You, the Liberal Arts, and the Human Condition. Please join me in welcoming Professor.
Thank you, Paul. What a delightful occasion. I'm tremendously honored to be here, tremendously eager to speak with such an avid group of students. A lot awaits you. But if you're like me in your first year, oops, I want it to be lower. We'll just keep it like that, sorry. Your first week, the beginning of your second week. If you are anything like me, you're filled with a combination of excitement and anxiety. Because you realize there's so much that you can study. There are so many bright people that you can learn from. You're working with, interesting colleagues in your classes. You're meeting all sorts of interesting people. But what's going to happen? How are you going to cope with all these choices that you have to make? How are you going to make the decisions necessary to succeed? What I want to share with you today is a little bit about how I think you can look at this challenge. And as I was crafting this lecture today, I was thinking about parts or aspects of human evolution, which is something that I've been studying wonderfully, happily for many years. How I can bring part of this study of human evolution and human history to you in a meaningful way that will have resonance for your first year experience. And I realized that one of the most interesting and salient examples of this had to do with one of the most recent important epochs of human prehistory, which is the colonization of the Pacific by humans, the most recent frontier to have been colonized by people. Beginning around 3,500 BC or so, we have human populations from the southern coast of China and Taiwan that start sailing. Yes, they start sailing first to the Bismarck and Solomon Islands. They make it to Samoa about 3,000 years BP. Tonga, then the Marshall Islands. Hawaii, 1,350 BP. The Pitcairn Islands, and finally Easter Island, only 870 years before present. A remarkable series of events, and even more remarkable when you think about how people undertook these journeys. We're talking about an epoch of history when we had technology, but nothing like modern technology. So imagine you getting into this canoe. Nice, right? I mean, what do you do? Do you have one canoe? Are there many canoes? What do you have in the canoe? What guidance do you have? Is it just a lark that you get in the canoe one Saturday afternoon and say, yeah, I'm going? It turns out to be nothing like that random. And this is where part of this begins to resonate with you. Because the people who got into those boats more than 3,500 years ago had lots of cultural knowledge and wherewithal. They had with them charts like this one, made out of bamboo and wood, that showed the direction of tides, of currents, and of landforms. They had a rich oral tradition of knowing where to sail under what conditions based on previous smaller journeys. People had been sailing, exploring along coasts for hundreds, if not thousands of years before this. They were experienced. They had a tremendous amount of oral tradition, some durable goods, and as we see from the archaeological record, a beautifully preserved partial canoe that was discovered not long ago in New Zealand that shows that it wasn't just a simple little canoe with an outrigger, was probably a pretty big double-hulled canoe that had a lot of gear in it, at least relative to that time. There was preserved breadfruit paste. May not sound good, but it really will stick to your ribs and be very nourishing on a long journey. There were giant taro roots, probably some domesticated animals as well. In other words, the people who got into these boats were not alone. There were many people. There was quite a bit of gear. There was a lot of knowledge. There was still risk and uncertainty, but there was a lot of cultural baggage that we brought with us. But perhaps the most interesting thing was just revealed in a fantastically interesting paper last year that showed that these sailors were sailing into the prevailing winds. So they knew the general wind directions. They were sailing into the prevailing winds, thereby reducing their risk overall, and sailing into the prevailing winds ensured that they would probably get back if they weren't successful. Now that's a quintessentially human thing to do. Very smart. In the absence of modern complex technology, humans are able to be tremendously resourceful. You are here. You are getting ready to get into your own canoe. Actually, last week you stepped into it. But you stepped into it not as someone completely without any support. You had a tremendous amount of support. Some of this has been made evident to you already. Other elements of it will unfold in the coming weeks and months and even years. But you have a lot going for you. And what I want to talk to you about today are some of the unusual things that you have going for you that you may not have even thought about. The biggest one is your amazing large brain. I'm fascinated by human brains and the evolution of human brains. But what's so absolutely fantastic about yours, you're all in your late teens or earliest 20s, and when we look at the maturation of the human brain, this is a figure from a very fine article from about 12 years ago in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences that shows the maturation of the gray matter of your brain through time. So here we are, the age through time. Here we are, age 20. This is you. What does this mean? It means that this last bit of maturation of the gray matter, the big brain cells, the neurons, the glial cells that support them, they are all finishing their differentiation. And right up here in the front of the brain, we have the most active activity going on right now for all of you. This is good, because there's a tremendous amount of work that this frontal part of your brain does in decision making and planning. But it also means that the job isn't quite done yet. So before you post that next photo on Instagram, remember this, right? Your brain still has some way to go, and you may not be exercising the best judgment. But this is mostly extremely exciting, that your brain is continuing to mature, and that this gives you tremendous potential for learning. Now, according to a recent survey just done a few years ago, when liberal arts students say what they hoped to get out of their degree, pretty predictable things emerged. Many people say they felt they were getting a good credential for entering the workforce. Others said financial security after graduation. Others said expectation of success, specifically career success. And yet others said fun times and personal growth. Well, what I want to offer to you today is that you should think about perhaps more of this, not so much fun times, but the personal growth. And that the way that you approach personal growth is going to propel all those other achievements and goals. I want you to think about how you are going to continue to grow your brain. After the physical growth and differentiation of your brain is finished in the next year or so, how are you going to continue to be a vibrant human being, contributing not only to your own enrichment, but to the enrichment of others? How are you going to do this? You're going to do this by choosing the way that you learn and the way that you interact with other people. And you're going to develop what psychologist Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset that will ultimately, I think, lead to tremendous amounts of fulfillment and success. A lot of people, when they're faced with a challenge like our Polynesians getting into the boat, are worried about the level of risk-taking. They're worried about taking any risks. Got to get on the phone, call somebody, make sure it's okay. I'm telling you that learning how to take risks in life, calculated risks, is one of the most important strategies for success and fulfillment that you will ever embark upon. Let's look at that brain of yours. As we think about the brain through life, here this bright red line indicates the brain's ability to change in response to experience. Now, you're right here, again, there you are, okay? So your brain is still in a very, very, very labile or a bit able to change state. This lighter red line indicates the amount of effort, the amount of mental, cognitive effort that you have to devote to such change. So you're in a real sweet spot right now because you're right here where your brain is still very able to respond to change and you don't have to exert too much effort, but you have to exert the right kind of effort. You are lucky because as a liberal arts student, you are predisposed, pre-adapted, as it were, to developing a growth mindset, which I think is so important for later success in your university career and beyond. What does a growth mindset really mean? Where does it come from in the human experience? One can think of many ways in which the human condition might be unique and how a growth mindset may develop from it. But I think a growth mindset truly is one of the unique attributes of the human condition because we are so good at taking risks and continuing to learn and increase our skills during life. This has evolved. This ability has been selected for. We are, as humans, incredibly creative and innovative. Now, chimpanzees and crows and some other organisms also are tremendously creative and innovative, but we are prodigiously so. We innovate, we're creative all the time. We are incessantly innovating. Some of this evidence of innovation, we're unearthing it as anthropologists, we're unearthing this evidence physically all the time. Some of the most recent evidence just came out of South Africa a few years ago. Evidence that people made complex tools, hafted tools, about 500,000 years ago. Now this is remarkable because these hafted tools are not simple stone tools or not simple shafts of wood. They're compound tools that require people to have made the individual stone tool arrow tips and to have joined them to a shaft with some glue to make them stick together and some twine to wrap it all up. Now this seems like an incredibly primitive and not very impressive thing, but this was 500,000 years ago. This was before our own modern species, Homo sapiens, evolved. This is a remarkable capability that indicates that humans had the ability to think about complex chains of events and how to put them all together to come up with an effective tool. Tool making turns out to be simple in some technical respects, but advanced tools require a lot more instruction. Here in a lovely paper that was just done a few years ago by some Scottish colleagues, they looked at the process of tool making, and some of it's, well, fairly easy and doesn't require a lot in the way of communication. You can look at a tool and you can begin to figure out on your own how to make that tool. You can more easily, however, imitate or emulate someone else. And the process gets even better, faster, and more efficient if you can actually learn from someone else. And this is where human tool making, human learning, human creativity and innovation really come to the fore, because we have all of these abilities to do basic teaching, gestural teaching, and verbal teaching. Humans today, watching a master stone tool maker, are looking in rapt attention, completely focused, undistracted, trying to learn the steps of tool manufacture. This is something that we don't see happening in non-human primates that also make tools. Let's just take a look. I pardon the ad at the beginning of this segment. Ah, thank goodness, no ad. Now, here's a little chimp, and he's got a nut that he's trying to crack there, and he's got a pretty robust log, and he's trying his best, but you can see he's missing. He's hot, bothered. He's going to take, there he is. He's with his mother now. He's going to take the nut and the log over. What's his mother doing? Not much, right? She's concerned with cracking her own nut and eating it. And he's wailing away. Things are rough. I mean, he's diligent. You got to give him that. He's diligent. But is the mother stepping in to assist? No. So now, right, he had observed his mother using a rock. So he goes to get the rock, brings it over, it's not easy, right? A lot of trial and error. There, it begins to give. Finally, the point is, is that he doesn't get a reward for a very long time. His mother doesn't assist him, and he has to, through trial and error, work through all of the permutations and combinations. This is not an ideal setup. At least, oops, sorry. All sorts of things on the internet that I can't control. The quintessential beauty of the human condition is that we learn from one another in very active ways. We learn, we share experiences from the past, what we did in the past and how things went. How do I make this tool? How do I go to a particular place? What's my relationship to a particular person? We talk about these things in small groups, in small, stable groups with intense face-to-face communication. And we speak. Language, we have no idea exactly when articulate speech and language precisely evolved in human evolution, but probably 500,000 years ago, people had the rudiments of human speech when they were making those beautiful hafted spears. And we take this incredibly important language facility to create our abilities to think about the past and to reflect on deeper subjects. Whether we're in a casual campfire situation or in a modern corporate boardroom, we're using these same techniques of communication to make nuanced plans, to think about the implications of our actions. This is truly one of the unique attributes of the human condition. So we have an explicit appreciation of what has come before us. Chimpanzees, elephants, crows, and other very intelligent vertebrate animals live in the forever now. They cannot systematically refer to the past or think about the future. We also have tremendous abilities to reflect on what we've done, on what we've achieved, on what others have done, and to then adapt. And by toggling back and forth between these two attributes, we continue to improve our skills. So we can almost think about this spiral of increasing skill level, as my colleague Andrew Whiten depicted in this paper a few years ago. So we increase our skills through increasing amounts of practice, observation, and refinement. We're not like the little chimpanzee. We seek help, we get help from others, and we incredibly improve. And what helps us, in addition to verbal language? Writing. Writing changed everything. Because when I could give you a clay tablet with markings that had meaning, these clay tablets, these early cuneiform tablets from the Near East from about 3000 BP are not talking about philosophy or poetry. They're very practical inscriptions dealing with amounts of goods that needed to be brought or paid for. But the existence of these tablets means that I could give someone something, they could give it to another person. I didn't have to be there to actually impart that information. The beginning of writing was tremendously revolutionary because it magnified the effect of language. It meant that we could, through remote activity, achieve something. Ratchet forward a few thousand years to the first mass-produced printing, the first woodblock prints that preceded the printing press. This early woodblock print from about 4,000 years after that earliest cuneiform tablet, indicated or allowed people to distribute large numbers of the same thing. Now, this may seem completely mundane and routine to you because you use the printed word all the time. But when it was first introduced, this was amazing. To be able to get information, to be able to get the complete text of, in this case, a piece of religious writing, or an inscription, an encyclical from a leader, was incredibly important, and the leader didn't have to be there. So what do you want to study? We now can think about not only having the written word and verbal language, but rather an extended mind. Where does your mind end and the world begin? You now have your intelligence spread between your mind and all of the devices that you work on, and the cloud. Where are you? Perhaps this is something that you want to study. If that doesn't suit you, perhaps you want to think about what somebody else in English literature, the famous poet Coleridge, might have thought about past mariners or others. You have the opportunity to explore what people thought in the past. You might want to study the behavior of economic cycles. If you're practically oriented, this might be of tremendous interest. And many theoretical economists find this work to be absolutely fascinating and tremendously applicable to real-world situations. You might decide that you want to study more about Civil War and pre-Civil War era history or post-Civil War era American history, and follow the careers of remarkable people like Harriet Tubman, who was a prominent abolitionist in this country. You might be interested in pursuing Latin American history. There are options for you within our college to be able to study this. Or perhaps it's something like visualizations done to show the social media connections between people that lead to differences in behavior. The political scientist James Fowler uses such network analysis to understand why people behave in the way they do and how social contagion works in the massively connected societies in which we now live. You can study things like this within the context of the liberal arts. And if you're like me, you might even like to study primate behavior and evolution and ecology and human evolution. All of these potentials are here for you. And the important thing for you is to maintain that growth mindset, to maintain that attitude of wise risk-taking, of knowing risk-taking. Don't avoid risk. Be courageous. Take courses that you don't know a lot about but sound interesting, because your mind will forever thank you. Your lives will be enhanced by this behavior. You will be a richer and happier person. The excitement and anxiety, I want these to continue, but I want the anxiety to ebb. The anxiety, a little bit of anxiety is good, but not too much. So keep a little bit of anxiety. That's really good for maintaining a growth mindset during your life. But mostly keep that excitement. Keep that idea of growth in your mind. Pursue something that you love. Pursue something that you find tremendously interesting, even if no one has ever studied it before. You are here. Go for it. Bon voyage. Thank you.
in and heirs of a venerable tradition, a tradition that has at its heart the willingness to ask the deepest questions about what it means to be human. You have just seen that in action. It is a tradition that cultivates the capacity to ask those questions responsibly and profitably. You have seen that in action. I'm happy to report that Professor Jablonski has generously agreed to entertain some questions. So we have a few minutes left in the room. If there are questions for her about anything she said today, we're happy to field them now. Don't be shy.
Yeah, don't be shy. Yeah.
Can you share how you came to discover your love for anthropology?
Sure. The question is how I came to discover or love anthropology. It started, to be honest, when I was about 3 years old, but I didn't know it was anthropology. I had a love of fossils. I discovered fossils on the farm where I grew up. And my father explained to me what these things were, that they were evidence of past life from millions of years ago. And I didn't know what a million was. I hardly knew what past life was, but I thought these were the most beautiful, entrancing things that I'd ever seen. And I wanted to learn more about them. By the time I was about 14, I realized that people were actually studying human fossil remains, which totally blew my mind. The fact that you could actually look at fossils that represented some kind of ancestor of humans that lived millions of years ago, and that you could begin to reconstruct what they did, what they looked like, the environments in which they lived. As soon as I realized that this was possible, I was hooked. My parents desperately wanted me to be a physician. Because I was the first in my family to go to college, they wanted me to do something practical. And here I was wanting to study human evolution. They thought it was daft, to put it generously. So I went to graduate school and I never turned back. I absolutely loved it. I love it to this day. I've been very fortunate, but I've worked hard and I've been a risk taker. And those things, that combination has paid off. And so I would urge the students here who have an idea, who have a passion, whether they've nursed it from a younger age or whether they develop a passion right now, to pursue it to the best of your ability.
Other questions?
Yeah.
What's the biggest risk you ever took, and what were the payoffs?
The biggest risk I ever took was probably when I finished my PhD. I had the choice of taking a job in Hong Kong or taking a job in Florida. This was when I was 27 years old, and I didn't really have any big attachments or a lot of gear, so I could go anywhere really that I wanted. And I said to myself, I can go to Florida when I'm 50. I'm going to go to Hong Kong now. So I went to the University of Hong Kong, started a career of working in the medical school there, but then onward to do a lot of research in China at a time when China was just opening up to outside scholarly collaboration. So it was a very exciting time to be there. I realize now it was a risk. I didn't think about it so much as a risk at the time. It seemed like a very sensible decision, and I'm ever so glad that I made it.
We have time for maybe one more.
Can you speak to a time during your undergrad career when you maybe doubted your decision to become an anthropologist?
I doubted myself about every 30 minutes. Especially, you know, doubt creeps in, especially when you have parents and caregivers who are saying, you're going to do what? You're going to go where? why do you want to do this? You know, I came from a family that had very practical orientations toward, you know, what was good and bad in the workplace. And they thought the idea of being an anthropologist, as fascinating as that might be, was about as stupid as there could be. So I had this sort of Greek chorus of family members in the back who were constantly intoning about what a imprudent decision this was. But I just decided that I had to give it a try, and so I made a deal with my parents. Listen, you know, I'm gonna try graduate school, and if it works out, I'll stay. If it doesn't work out, I will go along a path that will be more economically certain. After 3 weeks in graduate school, I knew that I had chosen the right path. So, yes, doubt is part of the experience. If you don't have doubt, you're probably not a human being. So I think come to embrace your doubt and always interrogate the choices that you have. You know, sort of make a plus and minus column as to, you know, what are going to be the benefits or the deficits from any particular option. And if the potential gains far exceed the potential losses, then you have to go with it, even if you don't have a lot of people chiming in and supporting you.
There's an inscription on the wall outside the dean's office that says, "The mind is a fire to be kindled, not a vessel to be filled." You've seen what the fire looks like when it's burning and what it's. And I hope we've done our job to